All right, welcome back to the channel. Bob Arum laying down the law on Terence Crawford and Vasyl Lomachenko and reiterating what he said, that if anybody don't want to fight in front of no crowds and ain't willing to take the money that I'm paying them, hey, I respect that. Next man up. Don't let the doorknob hit you with the good Lord split you. That's what, or sit more likely, sit up there on that shelf and do nothing while you wait around. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So Bob Arum, big time promoter, head of Top Rank, who is dealing now with attempting to get fights, boxing matches made in an environment where crowds cannot come. Now, they're obviously going to try to follow the same situation or the same scenario that the UFC just had, where they had a pay-per-view card with MMA fighters. I believe this was a pay-per-view card. I didn't watch it, so if it wasn't pay-per-view, excuse me. If it was just regular MMA, cool. But they had what I believe is a pay-per-view MMA fight, and there was no crowd. I think people enjoyed it. I'm not sure, but that's what Bob Arum is wanting to do, because he wants to get boxing back as soon as possible. And you can't have the stadiums full of people in the current, environment that we're in, because there's regulations around social distancing and the number of people that can be in a closed space together at any given point in time, because we're trying to really, stop the spread of this virus, which is really ripping through a lot of people's lives. So in doing so, Terence Crawford, I think Terence Crawford started this conversation, because Terence Crawford was asked, will you fight in front of a closed audience? And Terence Crawford said, yeah, well, I would do it, but they're going to have to pay me more money, because a lot of my money that I'm paid comes from the fan, cut of the gate. And if there's no gate, then they've got to figure out a way to pay me more money. Now, Bob Arum responded to that, and he's now doubled down on it and said that if you don't want to do that, that's cool. That's cool. Next batter up. We're just not going to make a fight involving you. But now he added something to what he said, which was, to me, like, yep, that's what I've been saying. That's what I've been saying. He points to an actual portion of the contract and mentioned it. He said, I would tell Terence Crawford and those guys, Lomachenko, go look at your contract and look at the minimums, and notice that we have been paying 3-4 times the minimums that we have in the contract for you. Which means this, because I've said this the first time I read a boxing contract, the first time, because people will send them to me and ask me my opinion on them, right? The first time I read a boxing contract, an agreement between a promoter and a fighter, what stuck out to me was the minimums. I was like, what in the world would you as a fighter agree to that for? Like, it's written in a way where you think, oh, that's the least I'm going to get. Oh, so that's cool. It's said I'm going to get at least $10,000 a fight, or I'm going to get at least, I'm not going to go below this amount. And what the contract that I saw had, like, for a 4-round fight, you got X amount, for a 4, 6, and 8, you get these minimums. And as you fight bigger rounds, your minimum goes up. And then when you get to a championship level, your minimum goes up. But the contract that I saw said a $100,000 minimum payment, $100,000 minimum payment for a championship fight. And I looked at the length of the agreement and all of that, and I thought to myself, man, once you become a champion, this agreement really starts to suck. Because no point, once you have a minimum of $100,000, that means that as long as he writes you, as long as he pays you that money, there's nothing else that you can say. So if your minimum is set at $100,000, but you are allowed to get, different sources of income or whatever, but you are usually getting a lot more than that, because they'll say, yeah, we're not going to pay you your minimum. That's just your minimum. We'll negotiate for every fight what it's going to be. Okay. So we're going to give you this amount. Say we're going to give you $1 million for your purse, but then we're going to give you 15% of the merchandising. We're going to give you 10% of the gate. We're going to give you 5% of this, that, or the other thing, right? So you wind up making a lot more money than your minimum, right? So that's where Bob Arum comes with check, you're getting 3-4 times your minimum, right? But I'm thinking, so if you're on a regular basis getting 3 and 4 times your minimum, why would you agree to a minimum to begin with? Why wouldn't you just negotiate your fight purse on a regular basis? Because you're not going to fight for $100,000. You're going to turn that down. Because if they say $100,000, you're going to be like, no, I should be getting, $2.5 million, but your minimum says $100,000 or your minimum says $500,000. What good is the minimum? If you're always going to earn more than the minimum. From my point of view, as a negotiation perspective, I would say, screw that. I don't want the minimum. I want to negotiate every particular deal. And we're going to look at the financials we're going to look at the cost benefit analysis of the fight. And we will determine, based on the cost on a mutually agreed upon cost benefit analysis of the fight, what my purse is going to be for that fight. Right? Which means that he has to show you the numbers of the fight every time. And you're not trapped in this situation where he says what he's basically threatening Vasyl Lomachenko and Terence Crawford with, or anybody else, that, look, dude, all I got to do is pay you your minimum. And then I'm not in breach of this agreement whatsoever. If I offer you the minimum, it's up to you to take it or not. If you decide not to take it, then I've satisfied my part of the bargain. And so you don't want to do it, sit your ass on just go sit down and jump on the shelf with Guillermo Rigondeaux. Jump on that shelf with Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, that also means that if he's being vindictive with a fighter and he just doesn't want to give him fights because let's say he beats Nonito Donaire and ruins Nonito Donaire, and now you're a champion, but yet you're a Cuban southpaw little guy that I don't think I can sell. Well, I'll just be giving you fight after fight after fight at your minimum, and since your minimum is so low, you're not going to accept it because you really can't afford to accept it. So what are you going to do? You're just going to sit on the bench until your contract expires or until you pay me off to get out of the agreement. So when I listened to Bob Arum hit you with the check your minimum thing, I was like, yeah, he's telling you you are not indispensable. And by dispensable means, if it says that and plus there's also, the agreement that I saw had not only a minimum, it had a minimum number of fights, right? So you're going to get 2 fights a year at a minimum payment. All he's got to do is offer you the bare minimum to fight twice a year, and he has satisfied his obligations underneath that agreement. And you are going to either have to take that money or you're going to have to go sit on the bench because you do not have the ability to go fight. You don't have the ability to go fight for anybody other than him, right? So that's where I'm like, man, Bob Arum is a slick son of a gun, dog. And Terence Crawford, more than likely, Terence Crawford is going to have to fight for the money that Bob Arum says that he wants to pay him. Right now, maybe he can be able to negotiate with them, have an opportunity to look at what the money is that's actually being made for the fight and come up with some equitable split, or he's going to have to do what Bob Arum said and sit on the bench. And that would go for Vasyl Lomachenko too. Now, what do I think the actual result of this is going to be? A guy like Terence Crawford, who's living in Omaha, Nebraska, and a guy like Vasyl Lomachenko, who is living in the Ukraine and making $3 million, making $3 million, not too long ago. Actually, twice last year, Terence Crawford fought. So $6 million last year. If he wants to sit out a year and not take any fights until he sees that, this thing has all been set and ready to go, he can do that. But the risk with that is that Bob Arum may never go back to paying the type of money that he's paying, because once, the saying is, once you give somebody something, it's tough to get that. It's tough, to get it back from them. So when people start acquiescing to Bob Arum and fighting for significantly less money than they are used to making, to get Bob Arum to just at what stage is Bob magically going to be less concerned with his profit margin, right? Never. You know what I'm saying? Never. So it's going to be tough to get Bob Arum to go back, and that might be the case even for, big marquee fighters. So either, Terence Crawford and Lomachenko are going to have to wait this out. They're going to have to take significantly less money for the same thing. And I think from Bob Arum's point of view, he's probably going to want people to take significantly less money for the same thing, because it shouldn't make a difference to him, because he's getting, it depends on how he gets paid. If he's getting paid off the profit from the event, which I believe that he is, then, as long as he's concerned about the difference between how much money comes in and how much money is paid. And it doesn't matter if, he's paying $3 million. If he's paying $10 million and bringing in 12, that's $2 million. Or if he's paying $500,000 and bringing in 2.5, that's still $2 million to him. And I'm positive that he understands how that works. So, be careful, man, with these relationships that you got with these promoters, man, definitely during these trying times, and be careful about that minimum. Now I point out that the minimum payments. I know those are industry standard terms, right? And you may not be in the position to be able to negotiate those things, but certain fighters at certain points in their career will have the leverage and the ability to negotiate those things and get themselves into a position where if something dramatic happens, that the person that they're negotiating with doesn't have a fail-safe built into the agreement that allows them to sit your ass on the shelf for a couple years and meet their requirements by offering you piddling amount of money twice a year, and they know you're going to refuse, right? So you either got to bow down and take it, or you're going to have to sit on the shelf and take it, one way or the other. But anyway, that's my take on the subject. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.